Chapter 34. Almost at the end. Red, black, red, black, red, black. Red jack on black queen, black 10 on red jack, red 9 on black 10, black 8 on red 9. Maggie moved the cards about on her bed, making little piles of hearts, of clubs. She was going to lose the game. She had, in fact, lost it already, but she continued to count out the cards in her hand by threes, staring at them and turning them aside unused. In a little while, in a minute, she would go downstairs and ask Uncle Morris the question she had been wanting to ask all along. "Do you know Timothy John and Miss Christabel?" This was exactly how she would put it. "Do you know them?" And then she would await his reply. All morning she had been rehearsing the words before the mirror. "Do you know Timothy John and Miss Christabel?" And the white face with the damp streaks of hair at each cheek would answer, "Yes. Yes, I know them." It would say carefully, holding her eyes in its own. Or, "No," it would answer, letting its eyes slide away. "Who?" Or something else. "Ah, Timothy John and Miss Christabel. Of course. Aren't they those two cats that live on the next street? The ones with the black stockings on their tails?" But she would persist. "No, Uncle Morris, you know who I mean. Tell me if you know them. Tell me. You said you'd bring them back. You promised. When it's time, you said. Well, it's time now." And she stared hard at the eyes in the mirror until, remembering something about people hypnotizing themselves, she looked away. He would be downstairs by now. Her aunts had invited him the week before. "We will continue our discussion next Sunday," Aunt Lillian had said, "precisely at 3. "Ah," he had answered, "precisely at 3. The two aunts had spent the entire afternoon discussing Maggie with him, describing her, really, while she stood in the hall. "She is skin and bones again. She sucks her hair. She doesn't speak. Her face is drawn." "Her face is drawn?" Uncle Morris had interrupted. "Drawn? How very odd. I always thought it was molded out of clay. Drawn." And there was a pause. Then, "Did they use colored pencils, do you suppose, or charcoal?" "Morris!" Aunt Harriet snapped. "There is no point in your remaining here if you're not going to take this subject seriously." And Aunt Lillian told him to return next week. Today. Precisely at 3. It was past 3 now, and in a moment Maggie would find Uncle Morris in the parlor chair facing the two aunts on their sofa. Aunt Harriet would be speaking, and then Aunt Lillian would say something else, and Uncle Morris would say nothing. She gathered the cards into a single stack and carried them downstairs. "Where's Uncle Morris?" she asked in surprise, looking around and seeing no one but Aunt Lillian seated at her desk writing a letter. Writing about me, Maggie thought. To the new family. To warn them. "Where's Uncle Morris?" she repeated, but Aunt Lillian continued to lean over her desk, and when she finally answered, she didn't look up. "He's gone," she said. Maggie crossed to the chair in front of the portraits and laid the cards face down on her lap. Could you play solitaire on your lap? Probably not, but she would try anyway. "Where'd he go?" she asked, spreading her skirt out and balancing the cards on her knees. But it wasn't until the cards were all laid out in order that Aunt Lillian finally lifted her face. Whenever Maggie looked back on that moment, she saw it in changing patterns of black and red. The black and red of the two portraits as her eye spun past them, the black and red of the cards as they fell, helter-skelter, from her lap, the black of Aunt Lillian's dress and the oval of red lips that framed the words she spoke when she finally looked up from her desk. Aunt Lillian hadn't been writing after all, Maggie noticed. She had only been leaning her forehead onto her palm. Where'd he go? Maggie asked, louder this time. He's gone, Aunt Lillian repeated in a faint voice. Gone where? Away. Aunt Lillian's face was the color of the gray parlor walls, and her eyes were large and staring. Maggie felt a rush of liquid flow through her arms and legs. What do you mean, gone? She asked. Gone, Aunt Lillian said, and then, after a pause, forever. And she rose and crossed to the window, saying nothing further. Her back, like the cards lying face down on the floor, was straight and unrevealing. What do you mean, gone? Maggie tried again. Forever. You mean he's dead? She wanted to ask, but the words stuck like a scrap of wet paper in her throat. Aunt Harriet was in the room now. She, too, wore black, and she took her position at the other window. Maggie stared at the two black figures, standing as still as the large stone urns on the steps out front. In time, a sob came. A breath was caught, and there was silence again before Maggie finally ran from the room. She had a nosebleed halfway through the funeral. A nosebleed into a handkerchief held by a hand in a black glove. More red, more black. The widening red stain in the handkerchief was the most vivid picture she had of the entire occasion. It was, in fact, the only picture she had of the occasion. Her eyes had been closed the rest of the time. It's a dream, she had told herself as she was being steered out of the house, down the stone steps, along the front walk, into a car. It's just a dream. It's one of those dreams where you know you're dreaming, but you can't wake yourself up. If I close my eyes, I won't see the dream and it will stop. Or will it just go on without me? Can that happen? Can dreams go on by themselves if there's nobody there to watch them? Can you make a dream stop by pretending to ignore it? I'll try that. I'll just sit here with my eyes closed and I won't move. I'll keep my head still and my lips together, she said as someone led her out of the car, across a pavement, up some new steps, into an enclosed space, onto a wooden bench. I'll just keep my eyes shut and wait for the dream to die. And then after a while, I'll wake up and it will be time to go to school. There's a man's voice now, reciting something, a poem. No, a thing from the Bible. I'll cover my ears. Maybe when I wake up, I'll find that all of this is a dream. Adelphi Hills, Aunt Harriet, Aunt Lillian, Uncle Morris. I'll find that I really live somewhere else. Maybe where I used to live a long time ago, with a mother and father. Now there was the smell of flowers, spicy like cloves, carnations or something, and she breathed through her mouth. What if she fell asleep in her dream? What if she fell asleep and dreamed another dream? Can you do that? Can you dream that you're dreaming? What if that dream was worse than this one? Can you get locked into a dream forever and never wake up from it? Does your dream go on after you die? Is Uncle Morris dreaming now? Is he dreaming of me? I'll count to 100. I'll just sit here with my eyes closed and my ears covered until 100 is up. 500. Then I'll open my eyes for a split second and see if the dream is still on. 700. When I open my eyes, I bet I'll find myself in the parlor or in school or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Someone pulled her hand from her ear. The other hand. She's an ill-behaved child, she heard. Poor training. Bad nutrition. Look out, her nose is bleeding. And suddenly her head was jerked back. A warm taste of vinegar seeped into her throat, and a slab of something cold was pressed to the back of her neck. 6, 7, 8, 9. Her head was pushed forward now, and at last she opened her eyes and saw the red stain spreading across the white handkerchief held by the hand in a black glove. Blood. Her blood. Real blood, and she knew that she hadn't been dreaming at all, that Uncle Morris was dead, that she was attending his funeral, and that later in the day she would enter a house that would be empty of his presence forever. She knew, too, that he had not kept his promise after all. It was time for him to bring the dolls back, and all he had done was die. Uncle Morris was dead. Dead of a heart attack, somebody said. How could people like Uncle Morris die? She wondered, back again at Adelphi Hills. Here were the table, the books, the chairs, the mantel, the china cabinet whose surfaces he had brushed, fingered, altered. Here was the air he had breathed. Here were the walls that had received his tall and clumsy shadow. How could he be dead? She moved from the parlor into the hall. Here was the rack that had suspended his coat, and here was the mirror that had framed his head. Would he be there now in the mirror? Could he? Cautiously she peered in. There was her own face, white and solemn like a fish in a bowl, and over her shoulder, where Uncle Morris might have stood, a single object hung like a giant pearl at the end of a fishing line. The light pole that he had hidden over and over on the ledge above the door. With a sudden violent yank, Maggie tore its string from the ceiling and ran with it up to her room. All afternoon and into the night she sat on her bed staring at the smooth oval on its cord, rolling it back and forth like an egg across her palm, stroking it now and then with her finger and, in time, splashing it with the tears that finally fell from her eyes. How could he be dead?